Hey, good afternoon. Hey. Hope you guys are well this Monday morning. Good to see you. I wanted to just kind of deviate. We've been doing a lot of relationship talk as I'm preparing for our wife camp, which is this Saturday. And we have a marriage retreat coming up in February. But I wanted to talk about the prophetic. I know you guys love the prophetic and the prophetic ministry. So yesterday at church, we were doing a spiritual warfare series. And I was explaining on, I was teaching a little bit on understanding Satan and the different aspects of who he is. So I touched a little bit on Jezebel, and in the last couple of weeks, I've sensed some prophetic manipulation. I've even experienced it, meaning it has happened towards me. And so I wanted to thank you for the compliments on the hair color. Thank you for the compliments on my teaching. I'm so glad you guys jump on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for all those that are faithful Periscope followers. I really appreciate it that you take your time out to watch. So I was talking about prophetic manipulation. I was saying that I've sensed that there's kind of a surgency, or we're going to see a little bit more in the next several months. Oh, good morning, Dr.Faith. I will visit your church this Sunday. Awesome. I know we had a couple people from Periscope visit this past Sunday from DC, and last week from Ohio, from everywhere. You guys are just coming to Legacy, and make sure you let my team know when you come so that I can give you a hug and say hi. So thank you so much for coming. All right, London. Hi. Oh, I said that I'm going to start introducing myself before I start teaching. So for those of you guys who are on for the first time, my name is Faith. Welcome up. People call me Dr. Faith. I own a business called Ask Dr. Faith, which we do consulting and coaching and inner healing and deliverance, as well as I pastor alongside my husband at Legacy Center Church. All right, signed up for Pioneer Girls Conference. Woo! That is our big conference for girls and women of all ages at every stage of life. It's going to be November 10th through the 12th in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can still register. Late registration starts October 31st. So make sure that you do that. When am I coming to London? I'm coming to London in September of 2018. There's finalizing dates and all that. So I'm pretty sure when my hosts have the flyers and all that up, I will share with you guys. But I will be in London in September. All right. Let's talk about Jezebel. Let's talk about manipulation. Let's talk about prophetic manipulation, what that means. And once again, I said I'm kind of deviating from on my relationship scope because I sense that this is in the air, and I feel like this is kind of a prophetic warning for us as believers. And I just want to give you guys some instructions on how to handle prophetic words that may be manipulated or may come from a source that has other motives or may be tainted. Okay? So the spirit of control and the spirit of manipulation really achieved the same thing. When we're talking about the spirit of control, hi, those that are in London, hello. When we talk about the spirit of control, it is very overt. So when a person is controlling, you can actually see that they're controlling. Now, if you have a codependent issue, or you need somebody to kind of give you insight, you're very doubtful about yourself, you don't know how to make decisions on your own, you will not be able to tell when you're being controlled. But for those that are outside of the picture, usually when someone is controlling, it is very obvious. So when a person is controlling, what they do, first of all, is to break down your ability to make decisions. They break down your ability to think on your own. They say, I'm the only one who hears from God, or they make you feel like less than. In domestic violence situations, they make you question your ability to think. They make you question the ability to make decisions. That is one of the first clues that you are in a domestic violence or a controlling type of environment, right? So your faith and your ability to think by yourself, that's one of the trademarks of the occult, is very obvious, right? And the people usually will tell you, you're stupid, or you can't make the decisions, or I only hear from God, or, they're very direct with it. Manipulation, however, is a little bit more subtle. Manipulation is when someone does something, right? They impose their will on your your will, but also most of the times you won't know it unless you understand what manipulation looks like. And so they may cry to get you to do what they want you to do. They may bat their eyes to get you to respond the way they want you to respond. They may put guilt on you. They may make you feel like you're the one who made the wrong decision. They may make you feel like, I'm sorry, let me put my charger in here. Somebody said they're freezing, but it looks like everybody else can hear. So they may make you feel like your manipulation is subtle. When you're dealing with control, it is very overt. I didn't say anything about women or men because this stuff is very overt. Now, you're going to see men that are more controlling and women that are more manipulative. And the reason women are more manipulative is because sometimes they do not have the strength to be as bold and as just kind of out there in terms of their directive. So women are going to use their body, they're going to use their voice, they're going to use their eyes, they may cry, they may just know how to put the guilt on to get what they want, whereas men may use control more, where it's very direct. They're going to tell you what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. They're going to tell you how you're going to act and how you're not going to act. And so control and manipulation can both be men or women. Okay, so when we talk about prophetic manipulation is when a person prophesies to you based on a prior motive. So they will come to you and they will say, the Lord is saying this and the Lord is saying that, and they're not necessarily getting it from the Lord, but they're getting the information either from something that they have heard, something they have seen, or they have a prior motive. And so when you're in controlling and manipulative environments, you will find look, somebody here doesn't believe in makeup and jewelry. Well, then you probably shouldn't be on my Periscope, right? Scripture talks very clearly, I'm deviating a little bit, that God looks at the heart, man looks at the outward appearance, right? So what religion does is it forces us to look exactly at the outward experience, and it often causes us to forego the heart. So we have people that have the outward appearance where they have no makeup, long dresses, no jewelry, but a lot of them have a lot of heart issues. Okay, so I thank you for your insight, but this is not that Periscope. We don't get stuck on how a person looks on the outside. What we focus on is how they look on the heart. And I'm not going to call that person any kind of spirit, because sometimes people just don't know. They don't know. This is what they've been raised up in. This is what they believe to be true. So here we just believe differently. All right. So when we're talking about, and actually a Jezebel spirit will not only, the person said will make women wear makeup, and the Jezebel spirit is a very religious spirit. So you will find that a lot of times when you're dealing with the Jezebel spirit, it is very focused on rules. It is really, really focused on what you wear, what you don't wear, how you sing, how you don't sing, where you sit, where you don't sit, right? Because part of the Jezebel spirit is to cause you to believe that you cannot access God based on relationship, but you can access God based on what you do, right? So Jezebel is very work focused. Jezebel is very perfectionism kind of focused, and it will do whatever it needs to do to get you to do what it wants you to do. And that's what religion does, right? If you go into certain churches and they kick you out because you don't look a certain way, they're not really concerned about your heart. They're concerned about how you look, because it goes against what they think, right? So Jezebel is very much focused on rules and all that. So when we're talking about manipulation and control, I wanted to explain to you guys how it kind of manifests in different ways. Now, when we're talking about prophetic manipulation and prophetic control, because this is what you're going to get with Jezebel, is that what they will do is that it will not be overt. A lot of people don't realize they're dealing with a Jezebel spirit because it's not overt. It's going to be manipulation. And I was teaching our church yesterday, but a lot of times when you dealt with the Jezebel spirit, you feel tired, you feel confused, you feel deflated, you don't feel courageous, you feel pressure, you feel oppression. So one of the ways that you know that you're dealing with a Jezebel spirit is how you feel when you've come away from the presence of that person. If you're walking in confusion, if you can't make decisions all of a sudden, if you're feeling insecure about who you are all of a sudden, if you don't feel strength all of a sudden, if you feel like you can't, if you can't hear God, if you feel like there's a wall, then most likely you're operating under this spirit. Now, the spirit of Jezebel and the spirit of witchcraft go hand in hand, because what Jezebel does is it pushes its desires on you via control or manipulation, right? Jezebel is a man or a woman. It is a spirit. It is not a person. I know that most people think of women with red nails as Jezebel, right? But it is asexual. Thank you. It is a spirit. Now, you will find it mostly in people that feel out of control. If you study the root of Jezebel, the reason Jezebel became Jezebel is because she felt out of control. She felt like the men in her life had not given her a voice. And then she made an inner vow that she would not allow any men to control her anymore, right? And so then she began to do things in order to protect herself from being controlled. So most people that deal with the Jezebel spirit, they have a root issue where at some point they felt out of control. And so therefore they have begun to use manipulation and they have begun to use control in order to protect themselves. And that's why you do not demonize people. I do not like it when people look at someone's behavior and they begin to call them by that spirit. When you cannot be an effective deliverance minister if you do not know how to walk in love, right? And so you can call a spirit Jezebel, but you cannot call a person Jezebel, because the spirit is inside the person, but it's not the person. The nature of who that person is yet to be discovered, is yet to be healed. So anytime people are operating in certain, calling people witches and all that, you can call them that if they're being rebellious, if they don't want to learn, if they don't want to get help, if they don't want to, if they don't want to submit to that process. But you will sometimes get people who say, I didn't know I was doing this, or they were operating in confusion, they were operating in witchcraft, and they didn't know the spirit was taking control of them. You have to learn how to treat them in love. You have to learn how to deal with the spirit and not fracture the person. What the church has done when dealing with the Jezebel spirit or heavy witchcraft, and I'm actually mantled for heavy witchcraft. I came out of Africa. So the areas that you're delivered from are also clues of what you have authority over. Africa is known for its witchcraft. So usually Africans have a great propensity, and we have a great anointing to deal with witches. But not all witches want to be witches. Not all Jezebels actually want to be operating in it. A lot of people are doing it because this is who they are. There's also an aspect, which is what we call the characterological. It's a characterological issue, meaning that they have operated in a place of being controlled and in a place of always wanting, always feeling out of control and being in a place of chaos for so long that their personality becomes controlling. Their personality becomes manipulative, and you cannot separate it from them and from their spirit. So anyway, that's a whole other, I'm going into deliverance and how you would deliver and walk somebody through this. But the first thing is that they would want to be walked through it. Now, prophetic manipulation. There are people that can prophesy, and a lot of times the prophecies are not very deep. They're not really heavy. But what they do is they use their agenda and what they're desiring to prophesy something to you in order to get something from you. That is what we call prophetic manipulation. So their heart in releasing that word over your life is not necessarily because they really heard it from the Lord, but it's because maybe they sensed something, or they read something, or they picked it up from the air, and they know that there's some sort of gain from it. And the gain could be as simple as someone saying, "Oh, you're prophetic," or "Oh, how did you know that?" Or it could be as big as, to your downfall. One of the things I did this Periscope for is I want to teach you to know that you do not have to receive every prophetic word over your life, right? You do not have to receive every prophetic word over your life. The prophetic comes to encourage, it comes to exhort, it comes to edify. The prophetic also comes to correct. It comes to admonish, but correction and admonishing usually works best in the context of love, right? So if you do not really love that person and you're really wishing for their demise, and then you want to give them a prophetic word, that prophetic word is going to come out in the form of manipulation, because your heart and in which you released it was not pure. Okay. And so the word of the Lord over your life should, even if it's a word of correction, even if it's God exposing sin, it should always be redemptive. The nature of the prophetic in the New Testament is of a redemptive nature. In the Old Testament, the prophetic came just to correct. It just came just to bring judgment. It just came just to give direction. But in the New Testament, the prophetic comes to bring you back to Jesus. So when you have these prophets who all they can prophesy is problems or the sin that they see or the issues that you have, then you know that they're not prophesying in the fullness of what God is and who he is in the New Testament. And so I'm not, sometimes people say so you don't give words of correction. No, I do. I go to kings. I've gone to pastors. Let me not say kings, high level leaders. And I will say, if you don't stop sinning, this is what's going to happen to you, right? Every word that God gives you that is corrective, he should give you an instruction on how to correct it. God is not just going to tell you you're going to hell, right? That is not a prophetic word from God. He's not just going to tell you you're going to die at 35. Those are psychics. Those are Jezebelic spirits that come to bring confusion. The other way you want to measure prophetic words is by the fruit that it bears in your heart, right? So if you get a prophetic word that is a corrective word, right? And you say, you know what? You're right. I need to work on this. And I received a correction. Then the word is going to bear fruit. Now, sometimes people do not take correction very well because they're struggling with rejection. And so if somebody gives you a corrective prophetic word, because you struggle with rejection, you feel like they're saying something is wrong with you and your whole being. So sometimes we're not able to receive hard prophetic words because we're not healed. But sometimes we have the right to not receive hard prophetic words because the mouth and the heart in which it has come out is to destroy and to break you and not necessarily to redeem you. Okay, so you have to check if you yourself reject every word of correction, you reject every word of direction, then you have an issue with rejection. If you reject correction, if you reject direction, you have an issue with rejection. But if there are words that come in love and they correct you and they give you insight into behavior, then you know, and you are able to accept that, then you're not an orphan. Orphans don't want direction. Orphans don't want to be taught, but sons receive correction and they receive being taught. And I'm talking about not a son to a man or a woman. I'm talking about being a son to God, right? But if every time someone corrects you, you get angry, you get mad, you don't want to hear it anymore, then there's an inner healing issue. But if you're around a prophet, quote unquote, and every word they give you is a word of correction, every word they give you is a word of rebuke, every word they give you is a word of exposure, and they never give you any words of redemption or any words of direction or any words to build you up in God, then they're not operating in the full authentic spirit of God. There's something going on in their prophetic flow that is rooted in manipulation and it's rooted in control. And so you will have some prophetic people that will begin to prophesy and release words to cause you to be doubtful about who you are and where you're going so that they can control you. They want you to begin to lean on them for direction. They'll give you snippets of a word so that you can come running back. But that's why we need to teach authentic sonship. I get so mad when the majority of sonship that is being taught out there is about being a son or a daughter to a leader, to a pastor, to an apostle, to an whatever. Until you learn what it means to be a son or a daughter to God the Father, all that you're going to be doing is mimicking and emulating what you see. The worst thing a leader can do is to teach sonship and tell them that sonship is honoring your pastor, honoring your prophet, honoring your apostle, honoring your teacher. That is not, you're robbing what the authentic nature of sonship is. This is my DNA, so I get very grieved. Do I want our sons and daughters to honor us? Yes. Do we want our church members to treat us with respect? Yes. But if we teach them how to honor God and we teach them how to respect God, then it's going to be easier for them to respect us. So you have movements and churches where they teach you how to respect leaders, which is really, really good, and it should happen, and we should all honor our leaders and we should all bless them. But the first thing that we need to teach is how to honor God, how to fear God, how to reverence God. And if we can teach honoring God, then they will naturally honor and fear their leaders. Not fear in a bad way, but treat with respect. So anyway, I'm going off the rails a little bit here because there's a lot that's happening in the spirit realm that has kind of jarred me. But I really wanted to encourage you guys and just give you that word that there are going to be some prophetic words over your life that you don't have to receive. And you also need to make sure that you only don't receive words that tickle your fancy or are talking about cars and all that stuff. The best thing, guys, is to be in a healthy community where the people that prophesy over you love you. Right? So sometimes you go to places and you get prophetic words and you don't know the nature of that prophet's heart. And then, someone put on Facebook that a prophet told them they're going to hell. The nature of prophets in the New Testament is to redeem mankind back to God. And that could be, so let me tell you something. If someone is sinning, right? A prophet can say, you are sinning. And if you don't turn your ways from sinning, this is what's going to happen. But to come out blatantly and say you're going to hell, he's actually released a judgment on that person's life. And now that same level of judgment can come back onto his life. Okay? So anyway, I'm going to answer your questions. The School of the Prophets is coming up in August. We're actually doing a 5-fold school. People have already been asking me if they can register. So this year we're doing a 5-day school for apostles, for teachers, for evangelists, for pastors, and then we'll do 3 days for the prophets. So be saving your coins. It's going to be bigger and even better than last year. So, we can go from there. So someone said, research the prophets from the Bible. Exactly. You have Old Testament prophets and you have New Testament prophets. If you only live in an Old Testament concept, you're going to dry. You're going to dry out and you're also going to die out. Okay, so if you're going to be a prophet, you have to be holistically. You have to look at the nature of Jesus as a prophet. What was his role? What did he do? Jesus is the ultimate prophet. So before you even study the other prophets, you need to study Jesus the prophet. Jesus the prophet is now our guideline in how we disciple, in how we prophesy, in how we deliver, in how we walk people out. But there are specific anointings that you may carry, like Deborah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel. But even in that, there has to be a nature of redemption. The reason the Old Testament prophets prophesied the way they did was because Jesus was not there yet. Redemption had not been released. And so if you're still operating and prophesying out of that paradigm, you have not fully been made aware and understood what it looks like to walk in redemption. So this is our School of the Prophets is not a conference. It is a school. We teach, you learn, you get activated, you get trained, you get filled with the Holy Ghost. That's coming up. Another thing that's coming up, guys, is the School of the Nations. We are launching a training school for missionaries, for evangelists, for church planters, and for pioneers. So this summer in July, we're taking about 40 people to the Bahamas, and we're training you in evangelism, in church planting, in pioneering. In the morning, there'll be class. In the afternoon, we're going to go out and serve the city that we're going to be in. So if you're interested in joining that team or coming on that missions trip and want to get all the information, you have to email Dr.Faith, Dr. Faith. I know I have a lot of emails. That's what happens when you're apostolic. Dr. Faith, this one's at warringministriesint.org. Dr. Faith at warringministriesint.org. If you cannot, you don't remember that, then you can email us at info@askdrfaith.com if you want to come to the Nation School in July, and the other school is in August. Someone said something about sowing. You can ask again. I'm not sure if you're asking to sow or I don't know what you're asking. So, yep, Dr. Faith at warringministriesint.org if you're interested in coming to the Nation School. If you're a missionary, apostle, evangelist, church planter, if you feel like you're called to the nations. How do you deal with a parent that has Jezebel spirit? You create really good boundaries. You need to realize that you're dealing with the spirit and not the person. So you need to be able, it's Dr. Faith at warringministriesint.org. .org. You need to understand that even though you're dealing with your parent, yes, you're dealing with the spirit, but you're also dealing with a person. You can sow at warringministriesint.org. There's a donate button there, or you can PayPal at info@askdrfaith.com. Thank you so much for sowing. So if you're dealing with a parent that has a Jezebel spirit, you need to love the parent. You need to hate the spirit. And part of that is creating boundaries, and you need to have strength and the ability to assert that you do not want certain things. You need to have a voice to be able to say no. A lot of times when parents have Jezebel spirit or controlling tendency, the people who've been underneath it don't know how to get out from underneath it. So one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to figure out how you can we call it individuate, move away, go to a different city, go to a school that's far, get an identity that is separate from the thing that is controlling you. All right. Any more questions? I know I saw one that I missed. I'll take any questions on the prophetic, on the Jezebel spirit for a couple of minutes before I go. Sorry to deviate. How do you manage to schedule quiet time with God every day? You have to depend on the season that you're in. When I was not married, I had a lot of time. So I spent 2-3 hours in the morning with the Lord. When I had kids and got married, I spent time in the car, spend time when I'm showering. I find pockets. How do you get a loved one to recognize a Jezebel spirit in their life? That is a really hard spirit to recognize, and it's also a really hard spirit to deal with. And so you need to ask for prayer, and it's going to be really hard for you to do the deliverance and walk somebody through it. You need to ask the Lord to open doors for them to be in a place, because the Jezebel spirit also must be loved out. It's not just a deliverance issue. It's an issue of dealing with the core of their character and their core of their fracture. And so they need to be loved in a healthy context. If God reveals to you that someone abusive has a Jezebel spirit, do you confront this? You have to really use wisdom. Can you repeat your email? You can just email info@askdrfaith.com or Dr.Faith@warringministriesint.org. Why? As someone said, what if you're afraid of the Jezebel spirit? If you're afraid of the Jezebel spirit, that means you're already timid. That means you probably have some rejection issues and some codependent issues. How do you leave a church where the leaders have a Jezebel spirit? All right. So you need to grow strong in your confidence in God. You need to understand that God covers you. You need to make sure you go through inner healing in those areas. We don't have to be afraid of any spirit when we know that we are covered by the blood of Jesus and that we walk with God. But if you're not sure of how God communicates with you, then you're not going to know when God is telling you to run. You're not going to know when God is, trying to give you signs that a relationship might be unhealthy or the person may be Jezebelic. But the stronger you grow in your ability to hear God's voice and to know his direction for your life, the quicker you'll be able to identify when someone has those tendencies. And it's not always that God is going to tell you to run, but you're going to be able to know how to deal with it. If you're in a church that has Jezebelic leadership, you just need to run. Like if you go, this is one of the things. If you go and you tell them that you're leaving, they're going to tell you haven't heard from God. They're going to tell you that you're out of the will of God. They're going to tell you that you're not going to bear any fruit. They're going to curse you, basically. They're going to say if you leave, then anything that you do outside of them is going to not prosper, right? Those are clues that this is Jezebelic, that this is a controlling environment. And so how do you deal with the guilt of leaving? One of the things I do is I detox people from religion. And when you have been in a controlling environment, leaving it's hard, and you have to learn who you are again. You have to grow in confidence again. You have to get into a healthy environment. You can't leave a Jezebelic environment and then be out there on your own. You need to go into an environment where it's healthy, where you can be helped. Because there's a lot, people who come out of those tendencies are also really hard to disciple. I'm talking for the pastors. When we have to deal with someone who's been in a Jezebelic atmosphere, it's a lot of work, because you guys project everything on your new leadership. So you want to be in a place that loves you. You want to be in a place that is patient with you. You want to be in a place that also understands the ramifications of being in a controlling environment. It's the same thing with controlling marriages. All right. Any other questions? I'll take one or two. Narcissism versus Jezebel. Jezebel has a tendency of narcissism. So there's two different types of ways that Jezebel can present. But narcissistic people in psychology, we call it gold-plated poop, right? Deep down inside, they feel like crap. On the outside, they present this really beautiful, we got it together, I'm the smartest thing alive kind of persona. But when you really go into the deepness of who they really are, you realize that they're not really that strong. And so there's some narcissism to Jezebel. There's some types that can appear that way. Do you have a course in learning how to hear God? Yeah, I do. We're now scheduling all our courses for 2018, so we'll be letting you know. And we'll also be selling them. All my 4-hour, 2-hour courses will be up for sale on the site soon. Please come back to talk more on sonship. Sure, I love teaching on that. It's one of the landmarks of our church legacy center. Sonship to God, not being an orphan. Because you could say I'm the best son or daughter to a pastor or a leader and still have an orphan heart. They can still have you're performing and you're trying to please them and you're trying to do everything so that that pastor or that leader can bring you close to them, can affirm you, can give you identity. You can be a son or a daughter to a leader and still not be a son or a daughter to God. Okay, so it is the job of pastors, healthy pastors, to really teach what authentic sonship and what authentic, what that really looks like. All right. Any other questions? 1 or 2. Will you plant a church in Charlotte? So we are now actually in that place of talking about the cities that we're going to plant in. But we have people that drive from Charlotte to our church every Sunday. We have people that drive from Virginia to our church every Sunday. So we're not going to start church planting for the next 2 years because our church is only one. But at the rate that it's growing, part of our model is to be planting in the next several years. So we have some major cities that we are planting in and we're preparing for that. Okay. I forgive for discrimination. How can I heal for that? I'm not sure who discriminated you or in what context. Do the leaders know when they're operating in the Jezebel spirit? Sometimes they don't. So people may have come up to them. But the thing about Jezebel, it's afraid of losing control. So if you go to a leader and you say, hey, you might be a little bit controlling, or when you do this, it breaks people down, they may say, you know what, you've never been a leader before, you've never sat in my seat before, you're just a sheep, you don't know what I'm talking about, right? And the reason for that is they're afraid of losing the control. And part of that is because they get their identity from being in control and having a title. So some of them do and some of them don't. And a lot of leaders still continue to operate as in a controlling Jezebelic way because they don't have authentic leadership over them, or any leadership that has talked to them. They don't listen. They're just rebellious. They won't listen. How to deal with a controlling spirit in your husband and the damage it's caused. I mean, that can be really hard because you are one. You guys are one now. You have to. There's a difference between respect and there's and honor, right? So you can honor him. And also respect him, but you don't have to listen to everything that he says if it's damaging to you, to your children, or to your household. We're going to teach these things during Wife Camp on Saturday. So you need to learn how to balance that out. And if he's as controlling to the point that he yells, he hits, he's beating you, it's emotionally abusive, you've got to run. You've got to get help. All right? All right. Any other questions? Can triggers bring on a Jezebel spirit? So not triggers, but trauma. Okay? Not triggers, but trauma. So someone could have been fine, but then something happened where they lost control and they were really broken, or they felt taken advantage of, and that wound is not healed. Please plant a church in London. We'll be there in September, so we'll see. But there's an awesome church. Our friend has a church, Kadosh Ministries there, so you can go visit. When a person has a trauma, right? When a person has a trauma and it's not healed, then the enemy can now come in and begin to pervert that wound. So they may become controlling, and the spirit of Jezebel can now come in and take authority because of that trauma that has not been healed. Do we cover pastors outside of Legacy? We do. We actually have a network that we cover pastors under. We don't push it. We're very organic people, my husband and I. We believe in relationship. We're not out there to build the biggest network in the whole world. But if somebody comes to us and say they have a church, there's several that have come to us that want to be developed. We develop relationship with you. And out of that, then we develop a way that we can help cover you and develop you and propel you. So just email us. You can email the Dr.Faith at warringministriesint.org or info@AskDrFaith. How do you deal with that in a spouse? I'm not sure if you're talking about control or a Jezebel spirit. I'm not sure what you're saying. Can you recommend a church in New York? Yes. So I have a son in New York his name is Marcel Harper. He oversees the Times Square House of Prayer. They actually meet on Tuesday nights right now, and they're getting ready to plant their church. I'm not going to put the name out there because they haven't released it yet. And that would be one of the first places that I would recommend anybody that wants to grow in the prophetic, in authentic sonship, in community. It's Times Square House of Prayer, and it's in Manhattan. When is your next School of the Prophets? It's in August 16th through the 21st. I have a really good friend, Jonathan Walton, who's going to be coming to teach at that School of Prophets. He's going to be teaching on the apostles. He's written the Seers, lots of Seers books. He oversees the Seers Institute. So we have amazing people that are going to be with us in August. All right, my dears. Any other questions? How do you deal with the parent of the spirit? I already answered that question, so just rewind. What is the best way to heal after getting away from a Jezebel spirit? I've already answered that as well, so rewind. Get in a good community, get good accountability. Can you recommend a good church in Pennsylvania? I love a church called New Life in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Another church called Allegheny Center in Pittsburgh, but I would need to know what city that you're in. All right. Any other questions? Who do you work with in Houston? I would have to go look, and I've told my team that we need to develop a roster for churches because you guys ask us all the time where we recommend you guys to go. So I would have to go. In Philadelphia, there's a church called Eagle's Nest, and there's also a church in Camden, New Jersey, called The Light that I refer people to. Yeah, Houston, Texas is a little rough on the edges. I know that there are some churches there, but give me a little bit of time. I don't want to just have mentioned churches and people have gone and they're like, no way. So I want to make sure when I refer people to a church, it's usually because I've been there or it's relational. Okay. We love you. Thank you so much for having me in Alabama. That was awesome. I'll actually be back in Alabama next week, November 3rd and 4th in Parrish, Alabama. So I will be back there next week. And then I will be in Toledo, Ohio, November 18th. And November 10th through the 12th is Pioneer Girls. So sign up if you have not registered yet. So November, we got something going on every week, traveling a lot. All right, guys, I gotta go. I will talk with you soon. New Orleans, there is a church I love, but I'm going blank right now. Chicago, when am I coming to Chicago? I'm not sure. All right, bless you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.